There's something about night shifts that mess with your head. The silence stretches too long. Shadows move when they shouldn't. And your mind, left alone for too many hours, becomes your own worst enemy. I should have known better than to take the job. Pay was too good. The location too remote. The contract too eager to remind me of the non-disclosure agreements and security clearances. But when you've been out of work for months, your judgment dulls in the face of desperation. The job posting was simple enough. Night security officer needed. High risk, high compensation. Must be able to work in isolation. There was no company name, no detailed description. Just a contact number, a date, and a place. A fuel station at a dusty junction off Route 19, somewhere in the forgotten stretches of Montana. I met them there at midnight like a scene out of a bad spy movie. A black SUV rolled up beside my beat-up Ford. Two men in suits, their faces unreadable, handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a keycard, a heavy steel badge with no name, and a single sheet of paper. Report to Site 17. No phones. No personal devices. No contact with the outside world. Follow the posted rules. Break them and termination is immediate. There was no signature. The directions took me deep into a barren stretch of wilderness, where the hills rolled like the backs of ancient sleeping beasts. The road turned to gravel, then to dirt. Finally, headlights revealed a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Sign read, "Restricted area. Authorized person only. Trespassers will be shot." I pressed the button on the intercom. A voice crackled through. "Name and access code." I gave them both. The gate groaned open. The facility was buried in the ground, a slab of concrete with a ramp leading down into the earth, like an enormous bunker. No windows. No visible guards. Just floodlights stabbing through the dark. Inside, the air smelled metallic and sterile, tinged with something chemical I couldn't place. At the security desk, an older man with a hollow-eyed stare handed me a clipboard. "Sign here. You're assigned to Wing C, midnight to 8 a.m. You don't leave until relieved." He slid a laminated card across the desk. "These are the rules," he said flatly. "Follow them exactly." The rules were printed in bold block letters, numbered 1 to 10. Never leave your post between 12 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. for any reason. If you hear knocking on the security room door between these hours, do not open it. Monitor camera 6 at all times. If it turns black, notify control immediately. Do not look into camera 9 if the figure appears. At 2:22 a.m., perform a perimeter scan. If the emergency lights flash twice, evacuate. If the phone rings but no one is scheduled to call, unplug it and do not answer. At 3 a.m., play the provided audio recording over the intercom system. Do not consume any food or drink from the staff lounge. If you see your own face on any screen besides camera 1, leave Wing C and lock the door. Under no circumstances, discuss what you witness here with anyone. I laughed at first. Thought it was some kind of hazing ritual for new hires. But the older man didn't smile. He simply said, "You'll see," and left. The security room was a claustrophobic concrete cell with a desk, a battered control panel, and a wall of flickering monitors. 10 feeds, labeled cameras 1 through 10, showed different sections of the underground facility. Dark hallways, T-labs, storage rooms filled with metallic crates. No windows, no clocks. I sat down, staring at the monitors, and for the first hour, nothing happened. Nothing. And then the knocking started. 2 soft raps on the steel door behind me. Froze. A cold shiver prickled along my spine. Checked the clock. 12:48 a.m. Do not open it. I swallowed hard, standing so my back wasn't to the door, and stared at the monitors. There was no one visible in any hallway outside the room. The knocking came again. Louder this time. I kept my eyes on camera 6, remembering the rules. Monitor camera 6 at all times. If it turns black, notify control immediately. It showed a long hallway lined with heavy metal doors. Nothing moved. I forced my breathing to steady. The knocking didn't come again. An hour passed. Then camera 9 changed. At first it was normal. Just a view of an empty containment room with a stainless steel table and glass observation window. Then a figure appeared. A man, standing motionless in the corner. His back was to the camera. Pale hospital gown. Head shave. Thin arms hanging limply at his sides. I grabbed the sheet of rules again. Do not look into camera 9 if the figure appears. I didn't know what look into meant. Did watching the monitor count? Was I supposed to turn it off? Avoid eye contact. Before I could decide, the figure moved. Slowly, his head turned toward the camera. His face, it wasn't right. The features were too smooth, the eyes too wide and black. His mouth hung open in a silent scream. I tore my gaze away, my stomach lurching. When I risked another glance, the monitor was empty again. The minutes crawled by, each one feeling like an hour. At 2:22 a.m., I performed the perimeter scan as instructed, toggling through each camera feed. Everything was still. No movement. No figures. No flashing lights. I was about to sit back down when the emergency lights flickered. Once. I scrambled for the radio. Control, this is Security Wing C. Perimeter scan shows double light flash. Requesting evacuation protocol. Silence. Control, do you copy? Static. I felt the blood drain from my face. Third flash. Then a fourth. The hallway lights outside the security room went out, plunging the corridor into darkness. I slammed the control panel, trying to switch to emergency lighting. Nothing responded. A faint hum filled the air, like the low drone of distant machinery. And then the monitors began to die, one by one. Camera 1, static. Camera 2, black. Camera 3, offline. I grabbed the keycard and the badge, ready to make a break for it. Rule be damned, if the lights flashed twice I was supposed to evacuate. As I reached for the door, the phone rang. An old rotary dial phone mounted on the wall. Its bell shrieked into the silent room. I remembered the rule. If the phone rings but no one is scheduled to call, unplug it and do not answer. I ripped the cord from the wall. The ringing continued. I stared in disbelief as the phone, disconnected and dead, kept ringing. Cold sweat broke out across my neck. I threw open the door and bolted down the hallway, the emergency lights pulsing like the heartbeat of some buried leviathan. Ahead, a shape moved in the shadows. Not a person. Not an animal. Something tall, impossibly thin, its skin a sickly, translucent gray. Its limbs were too long, the fingers tapering into blackened points. It turned its head towards me. No eyes. Just smooth, featureless flesh. Ran. Blindly, instinctively, down a side corridor. Behind me, the thing followed, its movements unnatural, limbs bending at angles they shouldn't. I burst through a heavy door into a storage room, slamming the lock into place. My lungs burned. My heart pounded like a drum. On the far wall, a monitor flickered to life. Camera 1. And on it, my own face stared back at me. Not through the camera lens, from inside the room. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. I turned back to the monitor. The reflection was still there, grinning. Its eyes black as pitch. If you see your own face on any screen besides camera 1, leave Wing C and lock the door. I didn't wait. Fled. Down the hall, through another set of doors, up the service stairwell. Behind me, the facility seemed to groan. Lights flickered. That bone-deep hum filled the air again. At the top of the stairwell was a heavy security door marked Exit C-17. It was ajar. I threw it open and stepped out into the freezing night. Above, a sky smeared with 1,000 stars stretched endlessly in every direction. The ground was empty. No SUVs. No other guards. No signs of life. But behind me, from the open door of the facility, a voice whispered my name. A voice that sounded exactly like my own. And then the door closed. I was alone. And it wasn't over. The bitter Montana air clung to my skin, biting through my thin security jacket. I stood motionless in the open lot outside Site 17, waiting for any sign of rescue. There was nothing but silence. The SUV that had dropped me off was gone. No floodlights cut through the darkness now. The stars overhead, unblinking and eternal, offered the only illumination. It should have felt like a reprieve, a breath of freedom after what I'd just endured. But it didn't. The land around me was too quiet. No wind, no insects, no rustle of trees. Just that eerie, suffocating stillness, like the world itself was holding its breath. Check my watch. 3:18 a.m. 10 more minutes, and I would have played that recording over the intercom as instructed. I wondered what might have happened if I had stayed. If I'd followed every rule to the letter. Would I have survived the night? Or would it have been worse? Behind me, the door to the facility remained shut. No sound from within. No flickering lights. No pursuit. The rational part of my mind screamed to run, to put as much distance between myself and Site 17 as possible. But my legs refused to move. Because the voice that had whispered my name from the darkness wasn't just a mimic of my voice. It had known something. Something only I should have remembered. And that gnawing, impossible fact held me in place. I stared down the dirt road leading back to Route 19, but it seemed endless, swallowed by darkness. Had no phone, no flashlight, no vehicle, only my badge and keycard. The badge felt like dead weight in my pocket. A low rumble stirred beneath my feet. Faint like distant thunder trapped underground. It was coming from the facility. Against every instinct I turned back to the door. I don't know what compelled me. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was sheer, morbid curiosity. Or maybe it was something deeper, some unseen pull in my gut. I pressed my palm to the badge scanner. A green light flickered. The door unlatched with a dull hiss. The heavy slab of metal swung inward, revealing a pitch-black hallway. No emergency lights now. Just utter darkness. I hesitated. The night air felt like a shield behind me. But something in that darkness shifted. Sound barely perceptible. Ragged, uneven, too close. I clutched the keycard tighter and stepped inside. The facility had changed. The sterile metallic smell was gone, replaced by a thick, cloying scent like rotting leaves and wet earth. The air hung heavy, as if the walls themselves were sweating. I moved slowly, one hand trailing the wall for guidance. The humming had returned, but it was deeper now, almost felt rather than heard, a low vibration in my bones. As I passed the first intersection, something on the floor caught my eye. A smear of dark, congealed liquid. Blood maybe. Or something worse. I forced my eyes forward and continued. The security room was a ruined mess. The monitors were shattered. The chair overturned. The phone, still off the hook, lay on the floor, its rotary dial spinning slowly as if recently touched. The sheet of rules was gone. A single message was scrawled across the wall in what looked like dried rust, or old blood. I didn't wait to find out what that was. Instead, I made my way toward the control room, a place I'd noticed earlier on camera 3. It was supposed to be where central operations were managed, maybe where an evacuation protocol could be triggered. The corridors twisted in ways that didn't make sense. I turned left, and somehow ended up facing a dead end I swore hadn't existed before. The floor felt uneven underfoot, as though the building itself was sinking. Kept moving. At one point, I passed an open doorway labeled Containment Observation. Inside, a dozen beds lined the walls, each occupied. I wish I could tell you they were empty. That the figures laying there were patients or staff, peacefully sedated. But they weren't. They were corpses. Their skin stretched tight over bone, features twisted into expressions of horror. And on each face, the same wide black eyes I'd seen in camera 9. Vacant. Endless. They hadn't died recently. Some looked ancient, their skin yellowed and cracking like old parchment. One had claw marks down his neck, self-inflicted. At the far end of the room, a figure stood facing the corner. Motionless, a hospital gown hanging off skeletal shoulders. It was him. The thing from camera 9. Only now it turned its head, and I realized it wasn't just his face that was wrong. It was his entire form. Limbs too long, torso slightly misshapen, a patchwork of scar tissue and surgical incisions across his flesh. And where his mouth should have been, there was nothing but a gaping hole that split down his throat like an unhealed wound. I didn't stay to see if it would move. I bolted down another corridor, the air growing warmer, thicker. The humming grew louder, accompanied by a deep, rhythmic pulsing. Sounded like a heartbeat. The walls themselves throbbed slightly in time with the noise. And then I saw it. Security panel labeled Vault C. A thick, reinforced door with an array of warning signs. Beside it a card reader. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to turn back. But the badge in my pocket felt warm against my thigh. I drew it out. To my surprise, the reader accepted it. A soft green light blinked once, and the door groaned open. Beyond it a single chamber. And in that chamber, something I will never forget. It wasn't a lab. Not anymore. It was a nesting ground. The floor was covered in a thick, organic sludge, like blackened moss mixed with decayed flesh. Strange tendrils hung from the ceiling, pulsing faintly. And in the center a figure knelt. Or what had once been a man. His body was bloated, distended. His flesh partially fused with the material around him. Tubing ran in and out of his arms, neck, and chest. A crown of metal implants circled his skull. He lifted his head at my approach. And it was me. Not a doppelganger, not a twin. It was my face. My voice when it spoke. "You shouldn't be here," it rasped. I stumbled back. "What the hell is this?" It laughed, a broken, wheezing sound. "This place was never meant for you. None of this was. You were a replacement. A contingency." I didn't understand. "You're lying." "Am I?" The thing grinned. "You think you took a job. Think you signed up for a night shift at a lab. But you didn't." It raised a hand, pointing at the tendrils above. "This facility. It doesn't hire guards. It consumes them." My head spun. It couldn't be true. I remembered the job listing. The meeting at the gas station. The man with the hollow eyes. The rules. But those could have been planted. How do I get out? The creature's grin widened. "There's no out. Only down." The walls seemed to pulse faster, the heartbeat sound growing deafening. I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut, trapping me inside. The thing on the floor reached out, its fingers merging with the tendrils. "The final rule," it hissed. "What rule?" Its voice was a whisper now. And as the darkness swallowed the room, I understood. I wasn't meant to leave. I was meant to stay. I don't remember blacking out. One moment, the chamber's thick, fetid air pressed against my lungs, and the next, nothing. A suffocating void. No sense of time. No up, no down. And a voice. Not mine. Not the creature's. A low, female whisper. Smooth like silk dragging across glass. My eyes snapped open. I was lying on a cold, slick surface. The walls were no longer steel and concrete but a mottled, organic material, the color of bruised flesh. The air was heavy with a coppery scent, like blood baked into old soil. I pushed myself up, and the floor squelched beneath my palms. Gone was the Vault C chamber. Gone was the creature with my face. I was somewhere deeper. A tunnel stretched ahead, its walls pulsing with that same sickly heartbeat rhythm. Tendrils dangled like overgrown roots from a ceiling I couldn't see. Patches of fungus and pale, slug-like growths covered the floor. In the distance, a faint orange glow. I moved toward it. The tunnel seemed endless. Every few feet, the walls would subtly shift, reshaping themselves as though breathing. The air shimmered, distorting vision and sound alike. I passed things along the way. Remnants of what might have once been people. A bloodied security badge embedded in the wall. A half-dissolved pair of glasses. A broken flashlight, its beam flickering weakly against a pile of bones. Each object whispered of someone who had come before me. Someone who had also believed they could follow the rules and survive the night. But none had. The glow ahead grew brighter. It wasn't fire. It was a pool. A shallow, viscous liquid the color of old amber filled a wide chamber ahead, its surface disturbed by slow, rippling movements. I stepped closer and saw faces, dozens of them half-submerged, their mouths open in soundless screams. Eyes bulging, skin translucent, floating just beneath the surface. My stomach lurched. A voice spoke again. I spun around searching for its source. And there she stood. A woman, or what remained of one. She wore the tattered remains of a lab coat. Her skin was paper-thin, veined with black. Her hair hung in greasy clumps, and her eyes. They were entirely white, featureless like milky glass orbs. But it was her smile that chilled me most. A gentle, almost pitying thing. How do you know my name? She tilted her head. I shook my head. No. Took a job. One night shift. I'm not part of this. Soft laugh. She gestured to the pool. I felt my throat tighten. What is this place? She stepped closer, the air around her warping. Her hand brushed my cheek, cold as death. I staggered back. No. I bolted for a tunnel on the far side of the chamber. The floor trembled beneath my steps, the walls contracting as if alive. The woman didn't follow, but her words did. The tunnel sloped downward, the air growing hotter. The structures became less man-made, more ancient. Symbols carved into stone, crude images of figures offering themselves to vast, indistinct shapes. A language older than writing. I realized then this place wasn't built by us. We'd only found it, and caged ourselves inside. A metal hatch loomed ahead, marked, "No entry. Clearance A7 only." In peeling letters. I didn't care. I slammed my keycard against the scanner. To my shock, the light turned green. The hatch unlatched, and opened. Beyond it, a cavern. Enormous. Stretching far beyond what should have been possible. The walls vanished into darkness. At its center, a colossal structure of flesh, bone, and machinery intertwined. And something hung from it. A figure suspended by tendrils, partially fused with the organic mass. It wasn't human anymore, but it had been. It lifted its head. A voice filled the chamber, deep, layered with countless overlapping whispers. I stumbled back. "Who are you?" The thing smiled. Terrible, wet grin. Tendrils shot out from the walls, snaring my wrists and ankles, lifting me off the ground. I screamed, fought, but the pull was irresistible. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was that monstrous, smiling face. And its eyes. I awoke inside a darkness so complete, it swallowed not just light but sound. At first, I couldn't tell if my eyes were open. Everything was a suffocating black. I tried to move. My limbs heavy, my skin slick with something warm and viscous. The walls pressed in, close and breathing. I wasn't alone. Could feel them. Shapes shifting in the shadows. Not moving exactly, existing. Watching. A pressure in my head pulsed, and then a voice. Not spoken aloud but inside me. A whisper directly into my skull. I tried to scream but no sound came. My throat was raw, my lips sealed by something thick and organic. Slowly, the darkness lightened. Not from any visible light source, but from a pale, sourceless glow that bled through the walls. I was in a chamber. Flesh made the walls. Pulsing. Breathing. Veins the size of ropes snaked across the ceiling, pumping black ichor. The floor was littered with bones, human mostly but not entirely. And before me a figure. Not the creature from before. Not the woman with glassy eyes. Third entity. It wore the remnants of a military uniform, ancient and tattered, the insignia long eroded. Its face was partially human, one eye gleaming with dim recognition, the other a hollow socket teeming with writhing worms. It regarded me with a sad, weary expression. "You weren't supposed to wake up so soon." I managed to croak. Who are you?" A dry, rattling laugh. "A mistake. Like you." A keeper turned prisoner. He gestured to the walls. "This place, it eats us. Wears us. Builds itself from what we leave behind." I remembered the figures in the pool, the faces in the walls, the endless cycle. How do I get out? His smile faded. There's no out, only down. He knelt beside me, his breath smelling of old decay. But if you move deeper, if you reach the heart, you might end it. The chamber trembled, a low rumble reverberating through the ground. His head snapped up. They've found you. Without another word, he pressed a jagged shard of metal into my palm, a crude, makeshift knife, its edge caked with dried black blood. Cut yourself free. Go now. Or be one of them. Then he vanished into the walls, his form melting like mist. I wasted no time. Serrated metal met flesh as I hacked away at the tendrils binding me. Hot, stinking fluid sprayed from the wounds, coating my arms. The pain was sharp, immediate, but it was real. It meant I was alive. As the final strand snapped, a shriek tore through the chamber. High piercing. The others had felt it. Shapes moved in the darkness. Limbs too long. Faces twisted and inhuman. I bolted down a narrowing passage, the walls contracting behind me, forcing me forward. The humming returned, louder, faster, frantic now. I didn't stop. Not when the floor turned soft and spongy. Not when the ceiling dripped thick, tar-like liquid onto my back. Not even when a hand, pale and skeletal, reached from a wall and brushed my shoulder. I ran until the tunnel opened into another chamber. And what I saw made my blood freeze. It was a cathedral, organic, ancient, a place of worship for something far older than humanity. Bone columns rose into blackness, their surfaces engraved with impossible symbols. Skinned faces stretched across the walls, mouths open in perpetual silent screams. At the center, a pulsing mass. Heart. The size of a truck, suspended by living cords of muscle and sinew. It beat with a sickening wet thwump-thwump, sending shudders through the entire structure. Beneath it knelt the woman. The one from before. Her lab coat was gone, replaced by a slick, membrane-like robe. Her skin glistened with moisture. In her hands, she held something small and writhing, an infant-shaped creature, its features shifting rapidly between countless human faces. She cradled it, singing a lullaby in a language my mind recoiled from. When she noticed me, she smiled. "You came, Nathan. You've come so far." I raised the knife. "I'm ending this." She shook her head sadly. "You can't kill what isn't alive." Charged. The distance between us seemed to stretch, but I forced myself forward. The knife plunged into her chest, warm, dark fluid poured out. Her smile didn't waver. "Thank you," she whispered. And then she collapsed. The creature in her arms writhed, shrieked, and dissolved into liquid. The heart above shuddered, its beat faltering. The entire chamber trembled. From every crevice the things came. Dozens of them. Twisted, broken forms. Eyes vacant, mouths agape. But they didn't attack. They stopped staring. Waiting. A voice filled the chamber, the voice of the heart. "It is done. One vessel falls. Another must rise." I turned to run. But the floor gave way. Fell into a void. The last thing I saw was the heart rupturing, spraying black ichor. Then darkness swallowed me whole. Falling. Endless. A descent through a formless blackness so thick it felt alive, pressing in against my skin, slipping into my ears, my mouth, my eyes. I wanted to scream, but there was no air, no sound. Only the pounding of my heart. Then impact. I landed hard on a cold, wet surface. I lay still for a moment, blinking up at the nothing above me. But this wasn't the chamber with the heart, nor the tunnels. This was different. The floor was made of slick, black stone. The air was bone-dry, the scent of dust and old paper thick in my nostrils. A light flickered to life. Then another. Faint, electric blue orbs mounted on impossibly ancient walls. I pushed myself to my feet, the crude knife somehow still clutched in my hand, its edge dulled and crusted with black. Ahead, an archway. Beyond it, a room. I moved toward it. The chamber was circular, its walls lined with rusted metal shelves stacked high with documents, photographs, reels of film. This was an archive. Record. On a pedestal in the center sat a single book. Its cover was stitched from dark, cracked leather. The title was burned into it in flaking gold letters. Opened it. The pages were brittle, yellowed with age. Each one listed names, dates of birth, dates of death, method of integration. Page after page. Then I found mine. Nathan Carter. Born 1987. Integrated, pending. Cycle. 1190. Beside it a blank space. An empty line. I turned the page. Map. A diagram of the lab. No, not a lab. A structure built atop something ancient. The diagrams were crude, indicating tunnels, vaults, the heart chamber. And at the bottom one word. Boot. A final chamber, deeper than any I'd yet seen. I knew what I had to do. I tore the page from the book and followed the map. Through rusted gates, down crumbling stairways slick with moisture, past ossuaries filled with ancient bones. Everywhere faces. Not hostile, not pleading, just watching. They had no mouths now, no eyes, just smooth, stretched skin. But somehow I could feel their gaze, 1,000 unseen witnesses. Downward, always downward. At last a massive iron door. Root was carved above it in jagged, primitive script. Pushed it open. And there it was. The root. A vast, gnarled mass of flesh, bone, and metal fused into a grotesque throne. On it sat a figure. 'Twas me. Or a version of me. A rotting ancient corpse, its eyes long decayed, its teeth bared in a permanent grin. On its head, a crude crown of twisted wires and bone. In one skeletal hand a book. In the other a knife identical to mine. Around it, hundreds of figures in tattered uniforms, some centuries old, kneeling in perpetual worship. The voice came again. The vessel is returned. The cycle may begin. I dropped to my knees, my limbs betraying me. I fought it, every muscle screaming in resistance. No, I rasped. Not me. A shape moved from the shadows. The woman. Somehow still whole, her form ghostly and transparent. She knelt beside me. It was always you, Nathan. From the first cycle to the last. You were the first guard. The first to open the vault. And the first to fall. Every time. I shook my head, tears streaming. I don't remember. She smiled. They make you forget. Every time. But the place remembers. The corpse on the throne twitched. Soundless groan. I felt the knife in my hand move, pulled by some unseen force. I knew what was coming. To join the throne. To begin the next cycle. But this time no. Lunged. Not for the throne. For the root. I drove the blade deep into its pulsing core. The chamber exploded in light. The scream that followed was the sound of 1,000 minds breaking at once. The walls shuddered. Figures dissolved. The corpse on the throne burst into dust. The woman's smile widened. At last. The root writhed, tearing itself apart. The ceiling caved in. Darkness. And silence. I woke on the lab floor. Fluorescent lights overhead. The steady hum of machinery. My uniform was clean. My badge read, Nathan Carter, Night Security. The clock on the wall, 12:01 a.m. Clipboard sat nearby. A list of rules. The same rules. Rule number 1. Do not leave your post before dawn. Rule number 2. If you hear knocking, you didn't. I stood on shaking legs. The place looked as it always had. But the walls seemed quieter, less alive. A voice spoke from a nearby intercom. Report to Vault C for routine inspection. My blood ran cold. I looked down. The knife still in my hand. But this time no blood. I walked to the door, leaving it behind. A final rule came to mind, one I hadn't seen written down but felt in my bones. Never go back. This time I didn't.